to focus towards the kids, but I also want to think about us adults. Because I think it's important. So, we have Abraham, we have Moana. Excuse me, I tried... Moana? Moana? I have no idea. Yeah. I have seen the movie, I promise you. How is it pronounced again? Moana. Okay. Sorry, my wife's laughing at me too, so it's okay. But on the surface, it wouldn't seem like these two have a whole lot in common, would they? Abraham, 75 years old, right? Moana? Stop laughing, Leah. She is a teenager. He lives in the Middle East in ancient Babylon. She lives half a world away in Polynesia. And of course, the biggest difference is, well, she's a Disney princess and ancient leader of people. A big difference. He was the father of Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And in spite of these differences, these two have something in common. They both had a calling. They both were called to do something. They were called to be a blessing to their families and potentially the world. Abraham's story, I'm sure most of you are familiar with, right? He was born and raised in the city of Ur. He was not far from the Persian Gulf. God called him to take his wife Sarai, or Sarah. See, I can pronounce those names just fine. And his nephew Lot to travel to a land where God would show them. God said to Abraham, or Abram as he was known at that time, in Genesis 12, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And you may know that Abraham and Sarah did travel to the promised land, of course, and there they were blessed in their quote-unquote old age with a son, Isaac, who had two sons, with the younger son being Jacob, who became the father of 12 sons, which of course is where the 12 tribes of Israel come from. Now, if you've seen the movie of our young lady here, Moana, I got it. Now, if you've seen the movie, you know this story. If you've never seen the movie, I totally get. I have, again, I've seen it. But it was a story. Moana is the daughter and heir of the chief. Now, some of you, actually grandparents, probably could tell this story better than I could, actually. Was the daughter of the chief. She was the heir apparent, in a way. From an early age, she had felt called to the ocean, to the sea. And it felt like there was a pull on her heart. But of course, for her people, the ocean was a dangerous place. It was not a safe place to be. And so they were always told to stay away from the water. She was called out more than once by her father to stay away from the water. Now she wanted to be a proper daughter, a respectful daughter. She wanted to fit in with her people. Her people were farmers. They didn't go in the water. She wanted to be happy in the island where she was. She loved her island. She loved her people. She loved her father. She loved where she lived. But she could not help that the, quote, line where the sky meets the sea calls me. Now, call is a real thing. I mean, quite honestly, that's why I'm here. It was because of a call. It wasn't because of anything other than God called me. And believe me, I tried to fight God a lot over this call. These two people were called. Abraham knows God is calling him. He was called to be a blessing, to bless all the families of the earth. She wasn't so sure. She didn't know why the ocean was calling her. She knew it was. But she would soon find out that she was called to be a blessing to her people, to the families of her island, to all the families of Polynesia, because there was a problem on their island. The fish were dying off. The island's vegetation was dying off. The people were in danger of starvation. Something needed to be done. Someone needed to go beyond the reef to find a solution, or at least to find fish. Moana figured out it was her. Even though her father told her no. Everyone told her no. Going beyond the reef was dangerous, and this going beyond was forbidden. But she felt called. She felt like she had to. Call works like that. Scriptures talk all the time about different calls. Abraham's call was two-dimensional. God says go, and Abraham went. Pretty easy, isn't it? But in the song from the movie, How Far I'll Go, we get a better sense of calling. It's persistent. It bugs you. It nags at you. It's a song that gets in your head and repeats over and over and over again until you answer it. It's a physical draw that pulls you forward, pulls you into where the call is saying that you need to go. It's something that you're called to do. Not necessarily something you want to do. It's something nice to do. It's not a tiny tug on the heartstrings. It's a tug of war with your heart, with your mind, with your soul. Callings cannot be ignored, and yet people do it all the time, don't they? Moana felt called to the sea her whole life. She soon found out that her people actually were not always fishermen. They didn't always just live on the land. They actually fished and went out into the ocean and traveled. She found the boats thanks to her grandmother. But the people found the island and got stalled. They stopped where they were, much like Abraham's family stalled. You may not know this, but Abraham's father is the one who actually started the journey. Terah was a journey to the promised land. Genesis tells us that Terah was the one to take his son and grandson and daughter-in-law Sarai to go from Ur north to Haran, which is modern-day Turkey, in case you didn't know, and then on to the land of Canaan, which was the promised land. But Genesis 11:31 says, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. Terah got stalled, got stopped, got comfortable, I think is probably what happened. We wonder, was Terah meant to go all the way? Or was he only called to get them as far as Haran? We don't know for sure. Maybe he got sick. We know he died in Haran, but we don't know why he actually stopped, because that was not their intended location. So he got stalled for some reason. Maybe he found a nice house, or built a nice house and decided, this is where I'm going to stay. This is where I'm going to worship God. I like the food here. I'm going to stay. We're going to stick around. He probably still heard God calling to him. That little whisper. And it's easy to get comfortable, isn't it? It's easy to get comfortable where we're at. We get complacent. We don't want to do anything extra. We don't want to do anything else. We get comfortable. But we have to understand that our call, that God's church, the way we are supposed to move forward, is constantly changing, constantly evolving. It's constantly moving, and we cannot stall it. We can't do that. But that's what happened to Tara and Moana. They both got stalled. Stalled by the families, stalled by their direction, that they felt that they could not go beyond. And how many times have we ignored God's call? How many of us have been afraid of God's call? Where it's taking us, we want to say, well, maybe I've tried that before and I don't want to try it again. Maybe we're saying, well, there's other people that can do it, right? That's not my job. That's not my responsibility. And we have a tendency to turn up the volume on everything else so we can drown out God's voice. That voice that calls us to our call. It happens. It's our comfort. In our fear of losing what is comfortable, we can develop this great way of ignoring it. Can you imagine what would have happened if Abraham had decided to stay in Haran? There wouldn't have been a promised land. There might not have been a people of Israel to have a relationship with God. There might not have been the way things had played out through history. And we know that Jesus was called. We know that was going to happen, but how would it have looked? It might have looked completely different. If Abraham had decided to stay in Haran, the families of the world may not have been blessed the way they were. Moana, she discovers this pull, this feeling of going into the ocean, this lure of going into the ocean, this calling to bring the island goddess of Tefiti. Did I pronounce that? All right, so nobody's going to correct me this time, huh? Smart Alex. She's supposed to bring back her heart so it will bring everything back into life. Everything would be restored to wholeness. They were both brave, bold, and faithful. Faithful to the calls that have been placed on their hearts. We can't underestimate God. We can't underestimate the gifts, the powers, the abilities that He places upon us. And so we need to recognize what we are called to do. So, I'm going to be challenging. This is in addition to our question that I do every week. I'll share that at the end of the service here. But I have a special challenge I'm going to be giving you. I heard about this one church that did a 3x3x3. And it was for everybody. For 3 weeks, they were going to prepare to invite at least 3 people for 3 months. Does that make sense? Do you get that? I'm not going to challenge you to do that. I'm going to challenge you to invite one. And I'm going to give you 4 weeks to prepare for it. Okay? So in 4 weeks, I want you to come up with a name. I want you to write it down. You're going to give it to me. I'm not going to judge you. It's not going to be graded. But then, after that 4th week, that following Sunday, I'm going to have you make sure you invite them. We're going to have a special Sunday to invite people in. Okay? So be prepared. Now, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a struggle, isn't it? It's awkward to invite people to church. And it doesn't mean we're